So this is another Brewster. We're Brewster Broadcasting Network now. It's because Ron decided that's what we're called. But welcome to another one of these. This is the Offseason Trade Review. I'm Ted Schmidt, GM of the California Crusaders, and I have Tyler Simmons again with me to talk about trades. He's the GM of Jacksonville Hurricanes. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Ted. Yep, we're back again to bore you guys for an hour.
Yeah, I just wonder about that sometimes. Ron's doing a really good job with those GM Corner podcasts. They're interesting, and we are far less interesting. But we have good analysis, I think, and that makes up for our lack of interestingness. Probably not, but whatever. So we have a lot of these to do. So let's just jump right into it. And I was going to kind of go from earliest to latest, and that works out reasonably well for a start, because the first trade's you and me, I think, right?
Yeah, a deal we actually worked out, I think, at the end of the playoffs.
Right, and just for a little background, this was motivated by my desire to not lose as much in the expansion draft, and you're always looking for pitching, because it seems like your pitching staff is just continually a bunch of rickety old men cobbled together, and or at least that was my impression. I don't know how you felt about it, but so I sent you Raul Gralla, and then a couple prospects in Bertrand Giroux and Kalile Chimanga, which is a fun name, and got back Marco Vitale, Santiago Carranza, and Ricardo Sanchez. So since we're both involved in this, why don't you tell me what intrigues you the most about Gralla? Why was he something that you wanted to get?
I think you summed it up pretty well. My pitching staff, because I very rarely focus on pitching prospects because of my seemingly inability to develop pitchers, I always sign old guys as free agents and hold on to them until they're basically worthless. So Gralla was somebody that was already developed, looked like he could be a mid-rotation guy, and that was pretty much the crux of the trade. You were looking to move somebody to keep some younger prospects. I was looking for somebody that I would keep and put on my protection list, and it kind of went from there. It's kind of interesting since that trade happened. I think at the time it was a really reasonable trade, but I think you've really kind of coming out smelling like roses. Geralt really got killed by the conversion, and he went from an 8.76 guy to 8.65 after the conversion. I ended up not protecting him, lost him in Rule 5, and Vitale really came out smelling like roses in the conversion. He didn't really change at all. So that was a lefty that didn't drop in movement, and he's 8.77. Looks like he could be somebody that's a solid rotation piece for you. So
the one thing I'd say though is that he's only 18. He does have to develop soon, and the other problem with Vitale is that his third pitch is only a 4-rated changeup. So he might not be able to start, or he might not develop. And whereas with Gralla, you do have somebody that's 23 and developed, and he did okay in the conversion because he didn't drop his motion. He was one of those guys. Well, he did, but his number, what we know from the conversion is that he was a high 7 and stayed a 7.
Right. So yeah, I think it kind of was just one of those baseball trades that, especially with the expansion draft and kind of some curveballs thrown at us, you were having too many pitchers to protect, and I needed to protect a pitcher. I had a bunch of old guys that nobody was ever going to draft, so
it worked out nicely. And the other guys I got from you aren't quite as exciting as Vitale, although the game likes Ricardo Sanchez a lot. I'm not entirely certain why. I mean, he's 7.67, but that basically just makes him a lottery ticket. And same thing with Santiago Carranza, who actually has, I think, lost a little more motion since he moved over, which is a little concerning. But I thought we both did well. We'll just sit here and start this off by patting ourselves on the backs and boring everyone to tears, and no one will listen to any more of it at all. But I gave us both kind of, just kind of A's for this. The talent wasn't, talent's kind of B-level, but organizationally I thought we both did what we needed to do, and it was, we're smart, wonderful GMs, and we're just the best.
Yeah, I think it was, pretty stupid of me to allow somebody to get exposed to Rule 5. I just never thought that he would get taken. I could have put him on the DL, and that would have been the smart move. So I'd say that's probably the biggest knock for me in the trade. But I would kind of agree that it's kind of B-level talent and organizationally an A because it fit a need for both of us. With Sanchez, I guess my thought is maybe those 7s are kind of high 7s with that he's got a bunch of 8s for potentials for pitches. So maybe that'll turn out to be somebody that's a high 7 or even an 8 when he actually develops. But yeah, that's kind of about it with him.
Well, I like my return. I'm going to miss Corella. I mean, he's I think I probably, I was frustrated with him last year, but I think he's a good pitcher, and he'll be good for you for a while. Let's talk about, why don't you take this one, talk about the Vancouver Yellow Springs deal.
Yeah, so Yellow Springs parts with one of their mid-rotation to low-rotation guys in Rick Ward, who's getting up there in age, and they return Douglas Wills and Sang-Chil Ko, I guess is how you would say it.
Sounds good to me.
Rick Ward's somebody that was always kind of interesting to me. He has 2 phenomenal pitches and a splitter that's always been, you would think, good enough to be a solid mid-rotation pitcher, but the game has always rated him as a borderline starting pitcher, and I think it's not everybody agrees with me, but I really think that when the game marks the guy as a borderline starter, it hurts his stuff and his strikeouts, and I think that's kind of shown through with Rick Ward as somebody that's kind of maybe been an underachiever throughout his whole career, especially the last 5 or 6 years.
If I can briefly interject, even if you're not correct about the way the game interprets borderline starter, the very minimum that it's telling you is that the stuff you can't see, the internal ratings that, if you were playing offline and could edit stuff, what that tells you is that he's got to be on the low end of something, right? Like he's not. It's if you have a guy that you think has starter pitches and ratings, and the game's calling him a borderline starter, then there's something in there that's probably a little worse than it could be, or worse than it appears.
Sure.
Yeah.
As far as the return, Wills is kind of like Sanchez from the last trade. He's a righty that's 7'6", nothing really spectacular. And then Ko is somebody that's really a bullpen arm with a lot of control and not much movement since the conversion. So, I mean, it's not a huge return, but Rick Ward's also making $10 million. So they were never going to get a huge return for somebody who's on the hook for $20 million.
No, I think the thing I don't necessarily like about this a ton is it's kind of a win now move for Vancouver, and I'm not sure that they were a win now club. They had that big surge at the end of the season last year, but they were bad most of the year. And while they do have some young players, I almost wonder if this is a team that would be better off in the long run by going through another cycle of rebuild and taking all these kids that are about to come up and when they develop and play a little bit well, sell all those again and get a bigger stable of prospects, because the players they have coming up, while they're talented, they're not franchise cornerstones. They're guys that's I think you can are good quality players to have on your team, but they don't really have any of those wow prospects that some of the other clubs in their division do. So I don't know. Win now moves when you don't need to win now aren't my favorite thing.
Yeah, I guess I was going to say best case scenario, but obviously best case scenario is Rick Ward pitches amazing and they make the playoffs, but really the best case scenario is Rick Ward is in a ballpark that suits him as a fly ball pitcher and he does well, and Vancouver's able to flip him at some point this year for slightly better prospects than they traded away. Or maybe, guys that are similar talent but further away from being developed, somebody that fits their timeline maybe a little bit better.
Right, yeah, and that's what I kind of think. And otherwise, I think the trade's fair. I mean, I think those are the right kind of return you get for Rick Ward at this point. And they didn't lose much. I mean, those aren't tremendously great prospects they give up. So it's okay. And then on Yellow Springs' end, it makes sense. They didn't need the arm. He's getting a little bit older and a little ricketier, and they just got 2 little pieces that they can stash away and see what they turn into. So pretty with the caveat that Vancouver is kind of in a tough in between spot. It's a reasonable trade.
Yeah, I mean, for grades, for Yellow Springs, I would say, well, really, on both sides, the talent isn't huge. I would say Yellow Springs, it's a little bit less on the talent end just because they are trading away somebody that's a proven solid major league arm for a whole lot of, unproven ability and not that great ability either. Organizationally for Yellow Springs, I would rule it probably a B plus to an A minus just because of Rick Ward being an extra piece for them. Vancouver wise, I mean, you'd almost want to say it's incomplete to see what happens, what they end up doing with Ward. But, just off face value, I would say probably more like a B minus, just, because of the fact that, like you said, it's a win now move for a team that's you're not sure where they're going to be 4 months from now, 5 months from now. If this move was made at the deadline and they're in playoff contention, I think it's a great move.
No, I think that's all fair. Louisville and Wichita's next, and essentially where the genius poaches a player from his old team, which not tremendously surprising. That's the roster he's the most familiar with. But this is the Ed Curry goes to Wichita for $1 from Louisville deal, and it's a good pickup for Wichita. Curry might be a little overpaid at this point. He was kind of down last year, but maybe he bounces back a little bit. But he is still a DH, and even if he's slightly overpaid, this doesn't really matter, right? Those dollars that Louisville or that Wichita will be spending on him can't possibly go to pay a young prospect coming up. Those guys will, even if he viewed a bunch of studs right now, they would all be RBL. They would be out of their arc by the time this is over. So I think that's a fairly good pickup for Wichita. I would wonder if Louisville maybe float that he's available a little more first, or wait till free agency, or I wonder if you get a little more than $1 for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think Ed Curry's a far better DH, at least talent-wise, than Bertram Hahn. And, I mean, you look at what I got for Bertram Hahn and what Louisville gets for Ed Curry. Now, at that time of the offseason, you're probably not going to be able to move a DH just because everybody's thinking, well, I can just get a DH in free agency. But, you hit the start of the season, somebody gets an injury in spring training, or, early on in the season, there's an injury, or all of a sudden a team that doesn't think they're in contention finds themselves in contention, and you can maybe get a couple of lottery picks for it. Whether there's a difference between nothing and lottery picks that most likely will turn into nothing, I guess, is debatable. And I, hate to kill Louisville for this deal, but you would like to see him get something of value out of it, especially when it's the genius and you just see him just pick up a guy for free with Curry's talent.
Right. I think the other aspect to this too, though, is that Louisville does Nigel needed to free up some money. He's got a lot of people that need to be paid, that have arm going up, and Curry wasn't doing them any good. They've got so many guys that can play first base and DH. So there is some value to just getting rid of that contract. So we might be just kind of being a little bit overly,
critical
in trying to think squeeze every little last drop of value out of that.
But that's true. If I don't know what Louisville exactly spent that money on in free agency, if they are able to shore up the roster a little bit more.
We did not like it.
Oh yeah, you guys talked about it last night. It's just one of those things where, when we had that podcast and I talked about how I thought Jacksonville was going to be going downhill if I left, and not saying that I'm great, but when you're a team like Jacksonville and Louisville, where you're constantly just running that balancing act of trying to keep talent and trying to stay under the cap, you kind of have a plan in mind, and you know who's in the long-term plan and who's not, and who you're going to move. And so you can kind of try to make those moves a little bit ahead of time, just like Hahn, where I could have kept him last year and he could have helped me, but I knew that I wasn't going to keep him past last year, and it was kind of like time to strike while the iron was hot, where Nigel takes over a team and it's kind of like, okay, what do I do now?
Right.
and trying to kind of figure it out on the fly where, you know, you had a plan if you've been with the team for a few years. So he kind of gets stuck. I think you would have been maybe a little bit better off to be patient. But that's difficult when you're taking over a team.
Sure, and I don't want it. I mean, if you ask me what kind of team I want to take over, it's not Jacksonville is currently constructed or Louisville. I don't want a 95 to 100 win team. Not because I want to build something. That's one of the hardest teams to, like, you feel like you can only screw it up. Like there's no, you're trying to sit down in someone else's chair where they've already kind of created a system and a process and keep that going without making a mess of it. It's like, well, this is a good team. I should try to win with it. But it's not your team, and you didn't put it together. It's never a good fit. So it's not as enviable of a spot.
Right. Yeah. It's a very difficult spot to take over, and you don't know who those guys in the farm system that are kind of not high prospects, but that current GM sees them as placeholders, backups or, part-time players, and you might get rid of them and kind of screw yourself over without even knowing.
Right. So, grades wise, I kind of gave, this was kind of just a bunch of B's. Louisville with a little bit higher B's, Wichita with a little bit lower B's. That's kind of what I called it. Let's move on to, you want to tackle, this is one of the big ones, right? Las Vegas.
This is the blockbuster. I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
Sure. Okay.
Yep.
So this is where Las Vegas picks up Jimmy Greenwood from, I said that like I'm from where Jimmy Greenwood is from. And they sent a 23-year-old left-handed starter, Pierre Legrand, to Long Beach, along with a prospect who is a 21-year-old left-handed pitcher, Manny Gabriel. And, let's talk about what Long Beach gets, I guess, first. I like Pierre Legrand a lot. He's at worst a good number 3. In a good year, he's probably a number 2. He has all of his arbitration left. So far, he's got a 94 career fit minus, but I think last year he was 90. We do see these guys kind of settle in years 3, 4, 5, where they're just a little better. And then Manny Gabriel, his only problem is his motion gets a little bit low against right-handed hitters, and his stamina is a little low. But he could be kind of a 3 or a 4, and at worst he'll be a decent reliever. But I like the way he looks as a starter, and I think it could work out. I don't know how you got any differing opinions on those guys.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a differing opinion. It's always tough when you've got a guy like Greenwood who has a ton of talent and has good-looking ratings, but he has one big wart that everybody knows what that one big wart is. And so in any kind of negotiation, you're kind of behind the 8 ball. So I kind of feel for Steven in that trade. I really went after Greenwood. I'd put in a couple of offers that he liked, but Rex kind of came in there and gave him an offer that really I couldn't top. I just didn't have the talent at the time to top it. So I like Legrand. I think he's a solid left-handed pitcher. He could be even as good as a number 2. He could, be kind of a low number 2, high number 3. And I think that Gabriel, again, as a left-handed pitcher, I think he's a solid rotation piece. I think, a lot is made out of movement, but quite honestly, if you've got other pieces and he's got the stuff and enough control, I think he can make it work. Now, is he going to be Jimmy Greenwood? No, he's not going to be Jimmy Greenwood, but can he be a solid number 3 to number 4 pitcher for Long Beach? I think so. I think Long Beach picks up 2 solid, cheap rotation arms, and they trade away a guy that's going to get very expensive. And they were up against the cap. Well, that's true. Yeah, he probably was going to get really expensive for Long Beach. Right. And then, who knows what happened after the conversion, or maybe he couldn't offer him an extension because of their cap space at the time. It's just one of those things where he was kind of up against it. I think he turned him into a couple of good pieces.
I think it's hard to think you can do a whole heck of a lot better than that for Greenwood, because Greenwood's a little scary, right? Like, he is only 29, but he has dropped 2 stuff now. And, with he's always been one of those guys, he just wasn't ever, he has a couple great years and a couple kind of years where he's kind of good. And is he going to be, Mike Swanson part 2 for Vegas, where this guy just falls off a cliff? He could, right? He's 30 and he's lumped a little bit. So but on the other hand, I'm not trying to undersell the guy. I think he more than likely will be a good pitcher for Rex for a couple of years.
Yeah, could he fall? Could he continue to lump his velocity and his stuff? Yes. He's not going to be like Swanson and some of those other guys, like the reliever that you traded to me.
Oh, jeez, the guy who could have been the best.
Yes, yeah, that guy. I can't believe it. Anyway, we'll think of it.
Wow.
But they had the sinker, and so when that velocity drops and the sinker drops, the movement drops, and they get hit doubly. Where Greenwood's not. 3 years from now, is he going to be 5 stuff with 8 movement and 11 control? He very well could be. He could even be 4 stuff. But I think that's still a guy that you can put in your rotation. He's not an all-star, maybe, but he's still a solid mid to number 4 starting pitcher, even if he drops. I don't think he'll drop that movement and control anytime soon.
No, I think that's a fair appraisal. I gave them kind of both A's for this. I think this is even a better move for Long Beach from an organizational standpoint. They free up a bunch of money or potential money. They get young pitchers, and good Lord, does that franchise need pitchers? Because every time they get one, they just get hit by a bus. They might have come out a little bit weak on the current talent end, but this could work out with them being absolutely fine. And Vegas had a surplus of young arms, which is always nice, and they consolidated some of that talent into something that'll help them make a push right now. So it's a good deal.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's good on both ends. Rect is like Fred and Stu. It seems like they've always got extra pitching arms or extra arms in the minors to be able to trade with or call up.
Sure,
so I think it's definitely. So I think it's a great move on both of them. I don't think those 2 pitchers are guys that Rect is going to sit there and lament trading away a couple of years down the road. So and he picks up a guy that can help him win a championship right now.
Yeah, I kind of with you. All right, well, since I started with that one, why don't you start with San Fernando and Louisville?
Okay, so San Fernando picks up Abel Gibson from Louisville, and that's in exchange for starting pitcher Pedro Vargas and infielder slash I guess infielder Armando Torres. Really Torres is just a shot in the dark. He's got no defense. He's got no power, no contact. Yeah, he's just got a bunch of speed, and that's about it.
He looks like minor league filler. I mean, he's 18, so anything can happen, but he looks like minor league filler.
Yeah, and not that Abel Gibson's not the pitcher that he used to be either. So it's just kind of I don't really know exactly what purpose he's going to serve for San Fernando. Randy's got a bunch of really good arms, so I don't know if he's just kind of putting him in as a. Wouldn't think he's going to use him in the bullpen with $5 million.
Well, I think
salary.
Kind of thought that he would kind of use him as a swingman type injury replacement, give the guy some rest. And when I look at Abel with his little bit of lumping and the fact that he's down to 7.57 versus lefties, he's just kind of warty now. And I just find that to be a good fit for a San Fernando pitcher. Looks talented but has weird warts. It fits in with the rest of his misfits. So.
Yeah, I kind of think of San Fernando now and Brooklyn in the same light. It's like they figure out ways to take pitchers that nobody else can figure out how to use and use them effectively.
Get something out of them.
But the Vargas is basically Abel Gibson at 19 years old. Vargas's ceiling right now is that of a swingman. So
yeah, and that's the one thing I don't. You you wouldn't think you'd be upset about a 19-year-old that's already throwing 98, 100, but the problem is you can't throw much harder, and his stuff is only a 7. So, like, that, his stuff's not going to bump. And that basically means if you want him to turn into anything better than a swingman, he has to get motion bumps or control bumps, and then those are a little less common.
Yeah, and the other thing that worries me is a right-handed pitcher with no outstanding trait.
Right, yep. He's got some negative splits against lefties, so he's not my favorite. On the other hand, I don't know exactly, what you're going to get in terms of a huge return for Morty Abel Gibson at this point. So, I do think this is a fair deal. It's just kind of one of those that, in the long run, if it had never happened, it might not even matter.
I agree. Yeah.
So, all right. What's next?
That's Montreal and Louisville.
Oh yeah, right. Can I do this one really quick? It's fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So Louisville got third baseman Abdul-Azim Rais. He is a 18-year-old third baseman of some kind with no range, but whatever. He's a AAA player unless he bumps. And Montreal picked up a quad A center fielder who's not that great of a center fielder, but he's an okay center fielder and he can defend outfield spots. And he's 29. And this won't matter at all in any way. Like, it just won't make any difference. So,
moving along.
Right. Sometimes it's just fun. You just get to look at your shiny new player for a little couple minutes. Go, yeah, I have something new. Feel warm inside. Atlantic City, Montreal. So this is Montreal picks up a pretty good catcher in Joaquin Camacho, who doesn't at first blush look like one because he's got 4 power and 4 eye, but he doesn't strike out. He's got good contact with an 8, and he has been a 3 to 4.5 win catcher. He's 26 years old. He's got 1 ARB left. It'll probably be somewhere he's $6 million this year, and probably somewhere in the $7 to $8 million next year. I wonder if Atlantic City moves him because he probably wanted a huge raise, and they probably can't afford it. And, I don't know. They're not replacing him with anything truly amazing at catcher, are they?
No, I mean, I think it's just one of those deals where they've got to kind of move some of those peripheral pieces while they still have value before they lose them for nothing.
Right. And, well, I guess the thing about it is I'm not sure I'm super excited about the return. I think when I was looking at the free agency recaps, I saw a lot of teams that could use a decent catcher, and what Atlantic City got was Glenn Walker, who looks at this point like a quad A starter or a low leverage reliever. He's 22, he's 6'8", he's 5'8" versus lefties. He's not going to develop a ton farther, most likely. Now anybody can bump, and make us look like fools, but he's not going to start well in this league, or he could be a kind of a weak reliever. Hungary Hungary Dank.
Dank, yeah.
Name. He just doesn't matter at all. And then Lucio Gomez is all right. He'd probably be a solid to good reliever, right? 20 years old, right-handed, great stuff. A little bit weak against the lefties with the home runs, probably, but he's okay. But I think really all Montreal got out of Joaquin Camacho is kind of a setup man for the future, and that just feels a little weak for a 3 to 4.5 win catcher.
I agree with you. I just don't understand how Camacho's been a 4-win catcher. I mean, I just don't understand how.
Yeah,
he's just one of those guys that Atlantic City's had the last couple of years that, like, I look at him and I just say, how? Like, how is this guy hit 330? Obviously, he puts the ball in play. That's what, he puts the ball in play, and he hits a lot of doubles. I mean, he's hit 40-plus doubles the last 3 years, and the year before that, he hit 39. So, he hits a ton of doubles, so that's where he gets his slugging percentage from. I don't really like catchers like this. I don't like players like this in general. He's not a good defender, but yet somehow has been a positive zone rating catcher with 35 plus
zone rating is
yeah.
goofy craziness anyway. So
what is that figured into the WAR?
Oh,
I
right.
don't know.
Maybe that's
So I
it.
mean, it's just one of those things where like I look at him and I just say no thanks personally, but it's hard to argue with the fact that he's been a
Well,
3 to 4 WAR catcher
but
too.
I think the other reason that's where it is catching is kind of crappy in the league right now. Like, there's just not a lot of great. There's Cisco, and I don't know. There's some other catchers, probably like four of them, but there aren't that many. And so if you people, everybody's heard me be super excited about player we'll talk about later, Augie Placencia, and Joaquin Camacho is why. And he's not the first player I've seen like this who's a switch hitter who doesn't strike out, has great contact skills and not a lot of power. And look at the batting numbers he's putting up. I think one of the, I just think, there are a lot of switch hitters. I think we underrate switch hitters. And I think one of the reasons we do is because so many of them aren't. Like, so many of them are switch hitters that just can't hit from one side. So we don't, but the guys that actually can, that don't have a platoon split, they probably just outperform. We just kind of sleep on them a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like Camacho is one of those guys that he's always more valuable to the team that he's on than the team that is trying to acquire him.
Probably.
So he's probably never going to draw the return that you think he might from the outside or, as the team trading him. He's just not. There's not that many teams out there that value that type of player. There are some GMs in our league that really value his type of makeup. But they would need to have a catcher. Yeah.
And me. But, grade wise, I gave Montreal an A because I thought they needed catching help and they got a good one and they really didn't give up much to do it. Atlantic City's grade for me is kind of an incomplete. If there's no way they could pay him, this isn't a bad organizational move for him. Their return's not amazing. I gave it kind of a B minus C plus for talent, and I gave like Montreal kind of a B plus A minus, just because he's what is Camacho's weighted runs created plus?
It's been over 110.
Yeah, 110.
Yeah, 113.
112 for his career. Yeah, I mean that's pretty damn good for a catcher these days. So.
Yeah, I would agree with those grades, even though I don't like Camacho. Just like I said, personally, I don't like him. But
well,
he produces, and it's a good pickup for Montreal for a team that needs a catcher. And for Atlantic City, it's hard to tell. Like you say, you don't know if they had any other offers at all.
Right.
You don't know who they floated him out to. But I mean, if Gomez does fill out, and I mean, if he fills out, he could potentially be a closer. You got a potential closer and a potential relief pitcher out of it. You get two major league players, and not that it's a great return, but it's better than picking up, 4 or 5, 3 or 4 mid-level prospects that might never make it out of AAA. So
no, I think that's true. I'm not trying to beat Atlantic City up. Okay, well, let's talk. You want to take the next one? That'd be Huntsville, Long Beach.
Yeah,
very exciting deal.
Yeah, Huntsville picks up relief pitcher Ricardo Baez, 26-year-old left-handed relief pitcher, and sends 23-year-old right-handed relief pitcher Antonio Salcido to Long Beach. Basically, it's Huntsville picking up a guy that's a lefty that has 7 movement versus left-handers, and trading away a right-handed pitcher that doesn't have any control and has 6 movement versus left-handers.
This is like completely predictable, right? Like Stever got a Stever guy, and Long Beach went, hey, this guy sucks here. You want to see if he's any good for you? I'll take your guy that you don't like and see if he's any good for me. And that's pretty much what this deal was.
Yeah.
All right.
So they'll both pitch, inconsequential innings for the next 5 years, and then.
Right. That you could have put someone else in, and it might be okay. I think Baez might be the one that maybe has a little more upside because he looks like a little more of a complete type pitcher. But on the other hand, he's got a 4.21 career FIP, and that is not something you get real excited about. It's not bad.
As a relief pitcher, that's not good for a relief pitcher.
Right. So, all right. Well, since that was brief and kind of boring, why don't you take Vegas Brooklyn?
Oh, this another one that you could see coming a mile away. Brooklyn floats out Henry Rechtenberg, and of course his dad goes out and picks him up. Las Vegas acquires, Henry Rechtenberg, who's been a very good outfielder and is still only 22. I did not realize that until I looked at this trade up earlier today. And they also got Alberto Benitez, who's a solid second baseman. And Brooklyn picks up Ken Bates, I think a pretty good young left-handed pitcher. And also another left-handed pitcher who will be a reliever. And I am not even going to attempt his name.
Really? I mean, Oginga?
Oginga Kahui?
Sure.
I don't know. It's Nigerian, so I don't know what the pronunciation is there.
Do you remember that, PlayStation? Was it PlayStation that Banjo-Kazooie was on?
Oh, yeah. Somebody needs to change his nickname right now. I think, Rechtenberg is one of those lefty bats that doesn't hit right-handed pitching all that well. How he does overall in the season is going to hinge greatly on how well he hits left-handed pitching that particular year. If he has a good 100 at-bats against lefties, he's going to be one of the best corner outfielders. Well, probably a top third corner outfielder. And if he doesn't hit left-handed pitchers very well in those 100 at-bats, he's going to be, average to below average. He's still runs well, plays really good defense in the corner. There's a lot to like about him. But that, poor split against left-handers is always going to be something that plagues him. Benitez is a right-handed infielder, like almost all other second basemen are. He's a guy that I think is solid. You don't like to see somebody with such low eye, and there's nothing really fancy about his range or anything else on defense, but he can play second base solidly.
I wonder if that might limit him to more of a platoon role. I don't know.
I think so. Yeah, I think he's going to play mainly as a platoon player. I would think on Las Vegas, Rec's always going to try to have somebody that's better than that starting against right-handed pitchers. For Brooklyn, I think Ken Bates is somebody that has a lot of potential. He just has not been able to realize that potential to this point. I mean, he had a 4.5 FIP a year ago, and really his 3.73 ERA was a big mirage. I mean, he had a 2.35 batting average on balls in play, and I just don't know. I don't know how those things compute.
Yeah, the thing that scares me, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but he gave up 38 home runs in 200 innings last year, and yeah, that's not good. Right? That's just not good. His FIP is not good. His home run allowed rate is not good. He somehow that BABIP is basically what did it for him. And now his ratings are better than that. Like those are great pitches. Those are top stars. I'm surprised his stuff is only 9 with a 10 fastball and an 8 curve and an 8 change. So that's probably pushing 10. The movement must be kind of a low 6, but he looks like he could be a little better than this. But yeah, he hasn't. I think this is one of those deals that's hard to figure out because 2 years ago Rechtenberg was a 4-win outfielder. Last year he was replacement level. Ken Bates last year was replacement level, but he should be a little bit better. And the other two are kind of more minor pieces. They're okay. So I think this, I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. Hopefully they're not both just mediocre and boring. Hopefully one of them at least, preferably both, really turns it on and plays like the player they should be.
Yeah, I just don't know. Non-fly ball, at least 6 movement, left-handed pitcher with that kind of stuff, giving up 38 home runs. And, his other season, when he made 14 starts, he gave up 14 home runs. So he wasn't any better that year either. It's just one of those things where you kind of look at it and just say, huh?
Right.
I mean, he's always going to be somebody that people are going to pick up just hoping that he's going to figure it out at some point.
And according to the very enforced, the other thing, two things I like about Ken Bates is that his nickname is Hot Pants. That's great. And according to the BBN Scouting Network, he always has snacks in his locker, which is also, I guess, good. Makes a lot of friends. So grade-wise, I gave Vegas, I gave them an A, because I think, or organizationally, I gave them an A because I think this is, again, they moved to surplus part that they weren't quite sure what to do with for the player they always wanted who could be pretty good and got some good talent, gave that an A minus. And Brooklyn, I gave them kind of a B plus, just because I think Rechtenberg has been good for them and Bates hasn't been good for anyone. Talent-wise, I kind of gave them kind of a B plus. So I think Brooklyn comes out on the end of this a little bit short, but really could go anywhere. I just don't know.
Yeah, I probably would make it a little bit closer to even, but it is nice that you see Rec get his son and he doesn't have to overpay for him, and Brooklyn gets a nice solid piece. So I hope they both do well. I want to see both of those guys succeed.
Well, next up, Boise, Mexico. Whose turn is it? I totally forgot.
You
Okay.
want to talk about Augie?
I do want to talk about Augie Placencia. So, I hope he's really good, because Augie Placencia is my Amy creation. Back in one of Rec's old leagues, the GEC, I had a first baseman that I didn't realize I could convert to an outfielder until halfway through his career, but he hit 400 3 times, and that was Augie Placencia. He was my franchise. He's the all-time franchise guy I had. Anyway, he is. So I've been trying to get him for years, but whatever. Fred's a nice guy. Good for him to have Augie. But Augie. I think I don't know what it'll be. I hope he's good. I have a sneaky suspicion that he will be, because I think there really is something about switch hitters that walk enough and don't strike out. I think this guy could hit, in the 330 to 350 range, even repeatedly. The question is his defense. He used to have a 5 range, so hopefully that's a high 4. But I still think he could even be someone you could use as a DH. I know we all like to have more power there, but I just think he could be one of those really, really good contact hitters that is pretty productive. They also got Santiago something I can't read anymore. I don't know.
Reyes.
Okay. He's a catcher. He's a backup. He's got 7.46 ratings. He just looks like a backup, and he's not very good defensively. Boise, for moving the player they got for nothing, gets 26-year-old Chris Rios, who is a 9.76 right-handed starting pitcher, who had been a solid middle rotation guy, and he kind of pooped the bed last year. But he's still kind of a 90 fit minus guy for his career. He is about to go into arbitration, I think. Yes, he's about to start his arbitration. So he's he's reasonably priced. He's a nice middle of the rotation guy, it looks like. Yatsutoki Yoshida is another backup catcher. I don't want to say any more than that. He might be a little bit better than Reyes as a backup catcher, but not a whole lot. And then the first baseman that Godzilla something
Terada.
I wish I would stop writing scribbles in pen that I can't read. I don't like him. That's my first take on him. So Brett does. I actually asked Brett about Augie, and he kind of didn't. He wasn't trying to talk me up. He was like, I gave him an offer, and I was like, I don't think this is close enough. Am I anywhere in the market? And he was like, no, man, I'm sorry. I'm going to get a decent starter and someone he describes as a power-hitting, mashing first baseman. And I don't think that that's what Terada is. I think Terada will be a maddeningly frustrating player who is great one year and terrible the next, because he's a right-handed batter with 6 contact and 5 avoid K. So he is just basically going to do what his BABIP does. If he has a bad BABIP year, he's going to stink. If he has a good one, he is going to be a monster. Brett does have do we know what his park looks like? Did he make it a Brett Park that's all right-handed hitting?
I can't even remember right now.
Go take a look really quick. Because if he did that makes him look a little bit better. Nope, average for righties is down. Home runs are up. Home runs for right-handed batters are way up. So this will help. Oh man, this is now the ugliest hitting park in the league, except for home runs for right-handed batters. But I still think that the fact that the average is right-handed down. I mean, you could see Terada hit 210 one year, and then the next year hit 350. It's I don't know. So
it's I'm kind of have my my frame of reference skewed by the way that Han developed. Han was a guy that was 6 contact for a long time and 9 power, but he had 10 eye. So that was the thing that always saved him. And then when he got to his full potential, he actually ended up at that it was a high 6 and a low 7. So, yeah, it depends on what Terada's contact ends up being. With that being such a low avoid K, it's probably not going to be very high, and you're probably going to be right. And he's going to be somebody that hits like 230, 330 with a bunch of home runs. But it kind of just it's enough of a shout that he's decent.
yeah, I'm not.
I don't think he's.
I'm not trying to beat up on the guy. He's not a bad player. He's not at all. He's a good player even. But I don't know. I wonder just from the. I'm not trying to read Brett's mind. It seems to me that Brett's a little more excited about him than I would be. But also I am not always right.
And I'm actually not super excited about Rios. I think he's okay, but I think his ceiling is probably right around where he's at right now, is about a 3-WAR pitcher, a guy that's going to be okay in the middle of your rotation. And for his current salary, that's all right. But I just think Augie has a little bit more of a ceiling than that. I'm always going to rate him a little bit lower because of the defense. I like having good defenders out there, but he's somebody that I think for 3 or 4, maybe 5 years, he's going to be a solid corner outfielder defensively. He'll be good enough defensively that you can forgive him because of what he'll do at the plate. He's going to be kind of like a Dusty Rhodes type player. Or who is the other one that Madison has?
I'm trying to look up Steve
playing
Dempsey
corner outfielder. Dempsey, yeah.
So the thing about he's got more power than Dempsey. He walks more than Dempsey. He doesn't quite have the contact Dempsey does. But Dempsey's just a pure left hitter with not a great left split. But that's too close. I just wonder how much of the difference. Rhodes is a better comp, ratings wise, but where is Rhodes now? Who got him? That was
Was Edmonton, right?
Yes, Edmonton. Thanks. I need to look at him really quick because
Rhodes has higher contact, I believe.
Rhodes is right-handed. He's just right-handed. Right. So Rhodes does have high, on the other hand, he has higher contact. So maybe that's who he is. Maybe that's the batter that he is. But then if he is, that's still a pretty darn good contact hitter. And it's somebody that, unlike Rhodes, isn't a first baseman. He can, at least for now, play a corner outfield spot. So.
Right. You never know when that 4 is going to drop to a 3, or the arm's going to be bad enough that he's going to not be able to be played. But that's kind of anybody. You just never know when that's going to happen to anybody. So the pitcher, is it Rios that they picked up, that Boise picked up, could lose a point of stamina and suddenly become a reliever too. So he has his own warts. I think it's kind of a guy who's a decent pitcher that is potentially somebody that could quickly become a reliever, traded for a solid corner outfielder who at any time could become a DH. So when you look at it that way, I think it's a solid trade.
Yeah, I do too. All of this nitpicking aside, I just think this is a trade that deserves to be discussed. But I actually think this is a great move for both of them. Boise needs more players. Mexico actually needed to consolidate. And the talents that went each way were fair. And I didn't want this, I mentioned that I had an offer, and I didn't want this to sound like, I need a colloquialism for having bad feelings after not getting what you wanted. Can't think of one.
Sour grapes.
There we go. But idiom, is that what I wanted? Anyway, this is still a better offer than I had the ability to make or had the desire to make. So the returns are fair and they're fine, and I just hope that my guy turns out okay. He actually had 6 range, by the way, when he was drafted.
Oh wow!
He's lost. Yeah, this is they need to fix this. I hope it doesn't happen in 19 because all that happened in 18 was guys lost range between the ages of 18 and 20, over and over and over again. It was just beyond stupid. And please let that be a thing of the past. I don't care what data you have in real life to say how realistic it is. It makes playing a baseball video game shitty. And also, I don't think it's very realistic.
Even if it is realistic, the the ratings that guys are starting out with is just stupid low if they're going to fall at that time. It's okay if you have a lot of guys that lose range at 18 to 20 if the majority of guys are like 7 to 9 range.
Right.
And
they
those guys that
fast and grew into bigger bodies and had to slow down, as opposed to like started out as like for whatever reason not able to get to baseballs and got even worse.
Right. Yeah. Augie's a 6 foot, 190 pound guy who isn't like a lumbering type looking body type player who didn't have any like major leg injuries that you would see cause this. So I think the biggest story is just that Brando allowing a young player like this to just be poached for nothing. That kind of, I'm surprised that he would allow that. I know, he went through so much early in the year last year trying to keep those guys, keep their service time down, and then to lose a guy like that for nothing. That was kind of shocking to me.
Yeah, it's painful. If we all do this long enough, we'll make a boneheaded mistake of our own at some point. So, or have already. Let's move on to Calgary, Brooklyn. Why don't you? This is the Balderas trades. We got some big trades in this one.
Yeah, Brooklyn picks up right fielder and longtime Calgary player Mario Balderas, who's still a very good player offensively and defensively at 32. And in exchange, Calgary picks up what looks like a potentially solid right-handed pitcher, kind of like a younger Rios. And what was his name? I can't remember now. Dusan Kukasenkech.
I can't pronounce that. Kukasenkech? Whatever. Sure.
And then another right-handed first baseman changes hands in Henry Jones III. And shortstop Kagahishi Ichi.
There's a name to this. I keep giving you the ones with names.
Yeah, no kidding. Ichi's kind of whatever. He's a lefty, glove first shortstop, middle infielder who's probably never going to be somebody that you want to have starting for a long time, but will probably start quite a few years in the league just because of his glove. Henry Jones is another one of those right-handed first basemen that's just like the guy from the last trade. He does have the contact potential, but he's got no eye. And really, I don't know. I'm still not a huge fan of him, but he'll probably be better than I ever think he is just because I am always down on right-handed first baseman.
You know who he looks like? Frank Budd, player we both know.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he looks like.
Not really a very good first baseman.
No, and he might not even be able to play. I think his range is a 1, so if he's a DH, that's even worse.
So that's not great. And Kusenchek is, he looks like he could be solid. He does have some room for growth in his velocity. The only downside is he's already 21, so it's not probably likely that he's going to see much of a velocity bump, but he's got good stamina. He's got enough movement. He's got enough control potential. If everything fills out, he's a solid number 3 pitcher.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if it's the great return that Calgary probably wanted for Balderas, but you're also talking about a 32-year-old hitter who's making $8 million, and who knows how long he's going to be able to continue to do that. He could be a great hitter for another 5 years, or he could be done in 2. So,
or 1, right? You
yeah.
never know if he's Yeah, I think that's a pretty. The player I like the best out of this whole group is the pitcher whose name I can't pronounce. And if I so Brooklyn, this move when I look at it with Brooklyn, I'm like, okay, you know what? Henry Jones, no big deal. The shortstop, no big deal. Number 3 starter for a great right fielder. And the thing is that we're just going to call him Doosan because that might be his first name. He's a little behind the developmental curve, but he is moving. It's not like he hasn't developed anything in a couple of years. His ratings are still coming up. So I can understand they're going, you know what? Like he's a number 3, probably he's a little behind the curve. It'll be a couple years. I'll rent this guy. But they didn't need Balderas until they traded Rechtenberg. And so my question is, looking at the division they're in, and I think Alan maybe posted something to this effect, that he's kind of like, I just wanted to try to win, but maybe it'll be hard. But looking at the division they're in, I'm not sure they're going to be they're going to be able to compete this year. And in the next 2 years, would you rather, because extending Balderas could be a nightmare. It depends on how much he's asking for, but I bet it's going to be a good amount. And I wouldn't give that guy anything more than a 3-year deal, and he probably wouldn't accept anything that short. So in 2 years, you could have no Balderas, and does Bates work out, versus you could still have Rechtenberg, who at least put up one great year for you, and a number 3 starter. It's not like this is a huge obvious, oh no, you made yourself worse for the future. But it is, you might have.
I mean, I think if Allen thinks that he can win, it's a good trade. I don't know. I make a lot of trades along these lines where you're trading away a guy that's a potential number 3, a potential number 4, maybe a DH, maybe a guy that can start, but not necessarily somebody that you really want to start. I mean, I don't think they're trades that you end up really regretting, because you can go out and on the free agent market, you can pick up a number 4 starting pitcher. Yep, you can pick up that DH that is like Frank Budd. you can trade for them for nothing. You can get an older guy that for a couple of years. Now, if you're talking about this guy being your number 2 or 3 starting pitcher for the next 15 years, well, then, that is a problem. But I don't think that it's that type of talent that he's given up. So for the short term, I think it's a big win for Brooklyn. And for the long term, I don't think it's that big of a hit, just because in 4 or 5 years, I don't think they're going to necessarily miss those players, because you can replace them.
No, that's fair too. And I'm not trying to throw Brooklyn under the bus here. I'm also very, very conservative with trading away my youth. So, I have that lens that I look at things through. Let's pick up the next one then. I'll just read the names off in this one, but I'm involved, so I'll let you do all the feedback. But this is my trade with Huntsville. I traded Brian Sullivan, who's basically says he's a switch hitter, but he's a left-handed bat that has 6s at all the spots, and can't really hit left-handed pitching that well. But he's a 10 range, 5-arm shortstop, so he's either a great second baseman, or I don't know if he can play short, but Kyle's gonna try. And I got back Francisco Vega, who is a 18-year-old right-handed pitcher, with kind of borderline stuff. I got a third baseman who is 19-year-old named something Reed. I don't know why I didn't write a first name. Don, maybe. Whose real only tool is his power. And his defense is kind of, who knows? He's fast. He's fast too. And then I got a 19-year-old whose first name I also didn't write down, named Kobayashi. Oh man, that's the team news I erased. Darn it! I accidentally edited over a team news when I was trying to copy stuff out of it, and it's one where I talked about this guy being the relative of Takara Kobayashi of hot dog eating fame.
No.
Anyway, 19-year-old left-handed bat who also has some pop. What do you think?
I think this is Stever acquiring a Stever player. I mean, like, if you were to manufacture a player, allow him to make a player from scratch, I think it would be Sullivan. Obviously, he'd want higher ratings, but the guy is basically a left-handed bat who hits right-handed pitching way better than he hits left-handed pitching. He has a ton of range, and he's been on record as saying multiple times that range is the most important thing. So he has enough of an arm that he has a rating at shortstop, so he's going to play shortstop. And he's going to play shortstop until he shows that he can't. And he does have a 9 rating, so I think there is a chance that he has some good zone ratings, but he'll probably have a lot of throwing errors. From your end, I mean, it's picking up a lot of guys that have one strong suit, and I'm assuming you're just hoping that, or one strong rating, and you're probably hoping that something else bumps.
Get on the major league roster.
Yep, you got, yeah. So I think you probably trade away a guy that you don't really have much of a use for because your middle infield's strong, and they trade away 3 guys that really, I don't think Stever would.
They're not Stever guys. They're all right-handed. They don't.
Except for the first baseman. But the first baseman has absolutely no contact and no avoid K either, so he's not a real high prospect. So, I mean, I think you're trading away somebody that doesn't have much value to you, and you pick up 3 lottery picks that you hope that something bumps along the road for one of them and they become a major leaguer, and he trades away 3 people that matter very little to him and picks up a young shortstop.
Yep. That's pretty much what it was.
So I don't think the talent is very good going either way. It's probably B minus. I don't think Sullivan's going to be a starting shortstop for Huntsville for more than a couple of years, but he fills a gap, and if he's probably hoping for a bump somewhere along the road too. So
one thing I'd say about Sullivan is that if he can play shortstop, I think he might have a little bit more value than we're thinking about. Only because when I did the free agency stuff, I looked at needs for all the teams. There were 10 or so teams that needed a shortstop. That Sullivan will be better than what they have. And we might just be in one of those lulls where we just don't have those guys right there playing that position right now.
Yeah, it's hard to tell, especially coming from your park. If his 2032 season is what type of hitter he really is. If he can be a 710 OPS guy in your park, and he can be, that means he could probably be a 750, 760 OPS guy or maybe even higher in Huntsville. And if that's the case, then yeah, he's got a ton of value as a shortstop. I just don't know if he is that. He's probably more like a 230, 240 hitter that he showed that season, and he's just somebody that fills a gap for a couple of years, but will eventually.
I don't know. It's all about, he will hit better in Huntsville's park because it is the left-handed hitter's heaven than he will in mine. And then the other thing about Sullivan is that I was playing almost exclusively against left-handed pitching because he was my infield backup, and which I realized that's stupid, but I had to give my other left-handed infielders days off. At some point, someone had to play. So Sullivan was actually playing like his worst half of his platoon split, probably 80% of his at-bats, which was not ideal. But why don't you grab the next one? That's Calgary, Omaha.
All right, just a second. Oh, so Omaha picks up third baseman Billy Wilkins in exchange for pitcher, sort of, Kyle Elston. Williams is poor defensive third baseman, not terrible, but the arm is a lot weaker than you'd want for the low range that he has. Yep. He is a switch hitter that, again, is basically a lefty hitter. The power and, looks good from the left side of the plate. The contact is probably always going to be the bugaboo. I mean, he only hit 280 last year in AAA, which isn't that impressive. So he's always going to have some warts. But I mean, I don't think Elston really is all that impressive either. So, because he has I think he really could be somebody that might be a decent relief pitcher if you just did the reliever conversion on him and just kind of bit the bullet. He's probably a 10, maybe even 11 stuff guy against righties.
Yeah, but he's going to give up homers, right? Like that's the problem too. I guess.
Well, yeah, you wouldn't want him to be your closer, but
you could use him. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know which of these players I would rather have. I kind of call them both like C-level talent players. They can be on a roster, but you're never going to be thrilled. You'd always be looking for an upgrade. And they both filled the need, right? Like Calgary didn't need another third baseman, and Omaha did. And so it's okay. It's an okay deal.
Well, I mean, I think Omaha's third baseman's really on their roster right now. Their third baseman's really Monger. Monger's not really a shortstop.
But he's not playing third baseman at the moment.
Right.
He's not playing third baseman. That's how you say that, those words. That's how that works.
Yeah.
Oh, these are so long that we just become ridiculous by the end of them. So I'll get the next one. That's Vegas Yellow Springs. This is another pretty minor deal. Outfielder Travis Lair, he is 25. He has some 6s and 7s against left-handed pitching. He's a decent defender. He is fairly cheap. He will want some money next year, which is probably why Vegas felt like they could move him. And they got back a guy named Inez Clouts, who is he has a girl's name and he sucks. Those are my notes on him. Not that there's anything wrong with girls' names. I just wanted to point out that his name is Inez, and his name is Inez Klutz, which is just kind of a fun name. But anyway, I don't really get this move for Vegas. It's just a complete downgrade. I know that Lara's ARB starts in 2036, and you might not want to pay that, but I would rather have 1 year of. This doesn't matter. I mean, this is such a minor thing. But just to pick into it, I want Rec to be wrong at something. I would rather have 1 year of Lara than any number of years of Klutz.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's one of those things where Lara doesn't have a place on the roster. I just don't know where Rect would be using him other than to get maybe 70, 80 at-bats. So I agree that it's, you wonder why you just don't why you don't hold on to this guy for this year and then just let him walk. When he hits arbitration, you just say, no thanks, and he walks. And you might still pick him up for $500,000 in free agency. So I don't really understand. Again, I don't like Klutz either. So, Vegas trades away somebody that has very little major league value and gets not much in return, and Yellow Springs trades away not much, and so
whatever.
It's whatever.
All right, next one. Charm City and Yellow Springs. It's your turn. Or wait, no, it's my turn. Is it your turn?
Yeah, it's my turn. So
whatever. Just do the next two. This one's boring.
Charm City gets a catcher who will be the backup against right-handed pitching. I like Braun because of the eye and the avoid contact and the arm. I think he's a good backup catcher. I think he's a really good backup catcher. But that's it. That's all he is. And they traded away $500,000 to get him. Or I guess that's the opposite way. Sorry. Charm City picks him up, right? Charm City got him from.
Charm City picked him up, and Yellow Springs got $500K.
But anyway, either way,
it matters. It matters about as much as if you got them backwards.
Yeah. So, and then, it's. You, California, and Calgary, you picked up Dury Kimweri.
I just love that I'm doing this to you. It's so great. Over and over.
Yeah. He's a left-handed pitcher, and that's about all you can say about him. And you traded away Agony Womack, and Womack is a right-handed pitcher, and that's about all you can say about him.
Right.
I think, the difference between the two is their handedness. Womack has a little bit better stuff potential, but he's right-handed. Kimweri has lower stuff, but he's left-handed, and he's younger. So
I'm just hoping he bumps. That's all it is. Wasn't super excited about Womack. He's okay. He could be a decent middle reliever. He could be like 9.7, 9.66, and you'd be all right with that.
not a whole lot to see there.
Yeah, no. Okay. Last one's you, so I'll start on this one. You traded with Vegas. Again? Is this the first one? This is the first one? I don't know. Vegas made a lot of deals.
The first one with Vegas this year, but it seemed like I trade with Rect about every year, every 2 years.
Yeah, which I actually have a hard time trading with Rect. It's funny how, like, some guys, you're thinking the same things and you can make the parts work. Rect and I are always just not even close to what the other person's thinking. And it's not like one of us is trying to screw the other one. It's just we start off so far apart in the negotiation process that it's hard for us to get there. So, yeah, whatever. Works out that way. Anyway, you sent away Tully Crow, who's kind of been your de facto ace-ish guy for a while. Although you never really truly have aces. You just, like, have an endless string of number 2/3s, and every year one of them pitches like a 2 or a 1, and somebody pitches like a 4, and somebody pitches like a 2. But Crow's 34. He's getting a little older, and as you mentioned, he doesn't seem like his numbers are okay, his ratings are okay, but you mentioned that his performance hasn't been the same since the elbow arthritis, where you just feel like it hasn't been. He's making 9.4, which is a good price for him. Got an option for next year. We still had a 90 fit minus last year, even with his slightly worse performance. And you pick up, it's my turn. I can say Takanori Goto. That's not hard. 18-year-old right-handed pitcher. He is 9.66, so could end up being a mid-rotation starter is kind of what I said about him. And what's wrong with my handwriting? Adam Simmons, is that what that says?
Simons, yeah.
Simons. And he needs some help. He needs to be either a reliever or he needs to bump his control. But he's young enough that one of those things could happen. I thought this was interesting for you because I get the wanting to restock a little bit, and I think that might be your primary motivation here. Is you've got a bunch of these kind of reasonably similar looking arms. But
yeah, I guess
I do think you downgraded your rotation a little bit. It's not like a horrible downgrade, but
yeah, I guess to kind of pull back the curtain a little bit, what started it all with Crow, I had no real intention of trading him. I was talking trade with somebody to pick up somebody that could potentially be an actual number 1 pitcher, and I also had free agent offers for Cavazos and Gonzalez. Neither one of them were. I didn't have the top offer for either one. I slightly improved the money for both and got them both in the same sim and completely maxed out my cap. So in order to try and maybe get a little bit of room back under the cap, I figured Crow was the only guy that I had that could both clear cap space and had any value in a trade and wasn't just a straight dump. And so I traded him, and actually it might end up working out that I don't end up picking up that pitcher anyway. But I still wanted to move Crow just because of the fact that I have a lot of arms that are very similar. I like Crow a lot. I think he pitches better than his ratings as far as his movement goes and his stuff. Really, an 8 stuff isn't that impressive anymore in this league. But I think he pitches better than a guy who's 8.69. He's always been solid.
I think he's a number 2. I think he's a legitimate, solid number 2.
Yeah, and I would agree that that it probably is going to be a downgrade. As long as if Crow's healthy, it's a downgrade, flat out.
Well, that is a question, right? He hasn't done a great job of staying on the field the last few years.
Yeah, it's a little bit overblown because of some of the injury problems he had earlier in his career. But 2 years ago he barely pitched and then did phenomenal in the playoffs. And then last year he made the entire season and then got hurt in the second game of the playoffs. So, but other than that, he'd been really good for me. But what it ends up clearing space for a big trade that'll be coming out probably after this next sim is really what it does.
Well, thank you for not doing it this time. Because we are completely out of gas, I think. I gave this kind of just B's across the board. It's just B's, a bunch of B's. It's a good, solid move, not spectacular. It's okay, it's fine. I don't know that Vegas needed to add Crow, but whatever, that's fine too. So anyway, anybody still listening? Thanks for. And I hope you enjoyed. Thanks, Tyler, for being here. This was fun as always. Keeps me on top of. That's a little bit selfish motivation here. It keeps me on top of what's going on in the league to do these things, and I enjoy them. So I hope everyone else did.
Yeah, I agree. It's fun for us, and I don't care about anybody else out there. No, I'm just kidding. I hope somebody at least listens to it and finds some value in it. But if nothing else, we're telling everybody what type of players we like and giving everybody else an upper hand in trades in the future.
Right, and we'll be wrong about all these reviews of stuff anyway. All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.